The birthday party had everything money could buy. Pink balloons shaped like unicorns floated against the cathedral ceiling of the Henderson family mansion, while a professional DJ spun the latest pop hits through speakers that cost more than most people's cars. 8-year-old girls in designer dresses giggled around a chocolate fountain that cascaded next to a candy bar worth more than some people's monthly rent. But in the corner, holding a small, poorly wrapped box with trembling hands, stood Thomas Wright, and his 7-year-old daughter Emma clung to his paint-stained work shirt like it was her only anchor in a sea of wealth she'd never known. The other parents whispered behind manicured hands, their designer purses worth more than Thomas made in 3 months of construction work. Their eyes lingered on his worn boots, his calloused hands, the way his daughter's dress, clearly from a thrift store, looked so out of place among the sea of expensive party outfits. When Emma's classmate Sophia's mother, Victoria Henderson, announced it was time for presents, Thomas felt his chest tighten as he watched the mountain of perfectly wrapped gifts from stores he'd never even dreamed of entering. But what no one in that glittering room knew was that the small, humble box Thomas carried contained something that would change everything, something that would make a room full of millionaires weep. To understand how this moment came to pass, we have to go back to where it all began 3 months earlier when Thomas Wright learned that sometimes the most precious gifts can't be bought with money. Thomas had been working double shifts at the construction site, his back aching from carrying steel beams under the scorching sun when he got the call that changed everything. Emma's teacher, Mrs. Patterson, had phoned with news that should have filled any father's heart with pride. Emma had been invited to her first real birthday party by Sophia Henderson, the daughter of the city's wealthiest real estate developer. But as Thomas hung up the phone in the tiny kitchen of their one-bedroom apartment, all he could think about was the $23 in his wallet and the stack of overdue bills on the counter. It had been just the two of them since Emma's mother, Sarah, had died in a car accident 2 years ago. The medical bills from her final weeks had drained their savings, and Thomas had been struggling to keep their heads above water ever since. He worked construction during the day and cleaned office buildings at night, but it never seemed to be enough. Emma never complained. She was the kind of child who made art projects out of cardboard boxes and found magic in the simplest things. But Thomas saw the way she looked at other kids' toys at school, the way she pretended not to care when classmates talked about their vacations or new clothes. The party was in 6 weeks, and Thomas knew he needed to give Emma something special. She deserved to fit in, to hold her head high among children who had everything. He started picking up extra shifts wherever he could find them, working until his hands bled and his body screamed for rest. But the money he made went to rent, utilities, groceries, the basics of survival. No matter how hard he worked, there was nothing left over for the kind of gift that would make Emma proud to be Thomas Wright's daughter. 3 weeks before the party, Thomas was cleaning the office building downtown when he overheard a conversation that stopped him in his tracks. 2 executives were discussing their children, and one mentioned spending $500 on a birthday gift for a 7-year-old. $500, more than Thomas made in 2 weeks. He leaned against his mop, feeling the weight of his failure as a father pressing down on his shoulders like the steel beams he carried during the day. But sometimes the universe has a way of providing exactly what we need, exactly when we need it most. It was while cleaning out the storage room in the office building that Thomas found it. An old wooden music box, covered in dust and forgotten among boxes of outdated office supplies. The building manager, Mr. Rodriguez, told him it had belonged to the previous tenant, a music store that had gone out of business years ago. "It's probably worth nothing," Rodriguez said with a shrug. "You can have it if you want. Was just going to throw it out anyway." Thomas took the music box home and spent hours examining it under the dim light of their kitchen lamp. It was beautiful, made of cherry wood with intricate carvings around the edges. But when he wound the key, nothing happened. The mechanism was broken, silent. For most people, it would have been worthless. But Thomas Wright had grown up in his grandfather's workshop, learning to fix things with his hands before he could properly hold a screwdriver. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because what Thomas did next proves that the most meaningful gifts come from the heart, not the wallet. Every night after Emma fell asleep, Thomas worked on that music box. He dismantled the mechanism with the precision of a surgeon, studying each tiny gear and spring. He walked miles to find the right screws at a salvage yard, trading his lunch money for the brass pieces he needed. His fingers, rough from construction work, learned to handle delicate components with the gentleness of a watchmaker. He watched YouTube videos on his cracked phone screen, learning about music box repair from experts around the world. But Thomas didn't just want to fix the music box. He wanted to make it special, uniquely Emma's. During his lunch breaks, he started visiting the public library, researching the song that played when he finally got the mechanism working again. It was Fur-Elise by Beethoven. A beautiful classical piece that seemed too sophisticated for a 7-year-old. But when Thomas played it for Emma without telling her about the music box, her eyes lit up in a way he hadn't seen since before her mother died. "Daddy, that's the most beautiful song in the world," she said, swaying to the melody. "Mommy used to hum something like that when she tucked me in." Thomas's throat tightened as he remembered. Sarah had been a piano teacher before Emma was born, and yes, she had often hummed classical pieces around the house. This wasn't just any song. It was a connection to the mother Emma barely remembered. With 2 weeks left before the party, Thomas made a decision that would have seemed impossible to anyone who knew how little money he had. He was going to personalize that music box in a way that no amount of money could buy. Using tools borrowed from the construction site and materials scrounged from various sources, he began to transform the inside of the music box. He carved Emma's name into the lid with the same precision he used to measure construction materials. He painted tiny flowers around the inside, the same wildflowers that Sarah used to pick with Emma during their walks in the park. But the most special addition was a small photograph, carefully cut and laminated, that he placed in the center of the box. It was a picture of Emma and Sarah together, taken just months before the accident, both of them laughing as they fed ducks at the pond. The night before the party, Thomas sat at their small kitchen table, putting the finishing touches on his masterpiece. Emma was asleep in the bedroom they shared, and the apartment was quiet except for the soft ticking of the music box mechanism. When he wound it up and opened the lid, Fur-Elise filled the room with its haunting beauty, and Thomas felt tears stream down his cheeks. It wasn't an expensive toy or designer clothes, but it was something no store could sell. It was love, made tangible. He wrapped it carefully in newspaper comics, all he could afford, and tied it with a ribbon that Emma had saved from a package months ago. It didn't look like much next to the professionally wrapped presents he knew would be at the party, but Thomas hoped that Emma would understand that some gifts are measured not by their price tags, but by the love that goes into creating them. The next afternoon, as they stood in the Henderson mansion, surrounded by wealth beyond their imagination, Thomas watched Emma's face as she took in the grandeur around them. She didn't seem intimidated. Instead, she looked curious, as if she were visiting a museum. When Victoria Henderson called for the gift-giving to begin, Emma took Thomas's hand and whispered, "Daddy, whatever you got me, I know it's going to be perfect." The other children opened their presents first. An iPad, a designer bike, jewelry that sparkled under the chandelier lights. Each gift was met with squeals of delight and applause from the parents. Thomas felt his gift growing heavier in his hands with each expensive present that was revealed. How could his simple music box compete with such extravagance? When it was finally Emma's turn, the room fell quiet. Even Sophia, the birthday girl, stopped playing with her new toys to watch. Emma took the humble package from her father's hands and looked up at him with complete trust and love. "Thank you, Daddy," she said, before she even opened it, and Thomas felt his heart break and mend at the same time. Emma carefully unwrapped the newspaper, taking care not to tear the comics that had served as wrapping paper. When she saw the wooden music box, her eyes widened with wonder. It wasn't shiny or electronic, but something about it called to her. The other children gathered around as she opened the lid and the first notes of Fur-Elise began to play. But it was when Emma saw what was inside that everything changed. The photograph of her and her mother seemed to dance in the center of the music box as the mechanism turned. Emma's gasp was audible across the room as she recognized the image, one of the few clear memories she had of her mother. The painted wildflowers, her name carved with such care, the melody that connected her to a parent she'd thought she'd lost forever. It all came together in a moment of pure magic. "Mommy," Emma whispered, her small fingers tracing the photograph. "It's Mommy." The adults in the room didn't understand at first. They saw a simple wooden box, clearly homemade, playing an old classical piece. But then Emma began to tell the story. How her mommy used to hum this song, how they used to pick these flowers together, how she had missed her so much that sometimes she forgot what her voice sounded like. Victoria Henderson was the first adult to understand what she was witnessing. This wasn't just a gift. It was a 7-year-old being reconnected with her deceased mother through the love and creativity of her father. When Emma wound the music box again and fewer Elise filled the mansion's grand room, Victoria felt tears streaming down her cheeks. One by one, the other adults began to understand. This father, who clearly had so little money that he couldn't afford proper wrapping paper, had created something that no amount of wealth could buy. He had given his daughter a piece of her mother's memory, wrapped in his own love and sacrifice. Share in the comments if you've ever received a gift that meant more than its price tag, because what happened next shows the true power of love over money. Sophia's father, Richard Henderson, was known throughout the city as a tough businessman who never showed emotion. But as he watched Emma clutch the music box to her chest, tears running down her face as she listened to the song her mother used to hum, he felt something crack open in his chest. He approached Thomas, who was standing quietly in the corner, watching his daughter with a mixture of pride and vulnerability. "That's the most beautiful gift I've ever seen," Richard said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "How did you know about that song?" Thomas explained about Sarah, about how she used to fill their small apartment with music, about how Emma had recognized the melody immediately. As he spoke, more parents gathered around, drawn by a story that reminded them of what really mattered. These were people who could buy their children anything, but they were witnessing something money couldn't purchase, the pure love between a father and daughter. Emma, meanwhile, had become the center of attention in the most wonderful way. The other children were fascinated by the music box, by the story behind it, by the fact that Emma's daddy had made it himself. "My daddy bought mine at a store," one child said with something like envy, "but yours made yours special just for you." As the afternoon went on, something remarkable happened. The expensive toys were set aside as the children gathered around Emma and her music box. They took turns winding it up, listening to Fur-Elise, and asking Emma to tell them more about her mommy. The simple wooden box had become the star of the party, not because of what it cost, but because of the story it told. Victoria Henderson approached Thomas as the party was winding down. "I owe you an apology," she said softly. "When I saw you arrive today, I made assumptions. I was wrong. Your daughter is lucky to have a father who loves her so completely." But the biggest surprise came when Richard Henderson pulled Thomas aside. "I've been looking for someone to restore some antique furniture for our home," he said. "After seeing the work you did on that music box, I'd like to offer you the job. It pays well, and you can work from home." Be there for Emma. Thomas stared at the wealthy man, hardly believing what he was hearing. "You'd hire me based on a music box?" "I'd hire you based on the love and skill I saw in every detail of that music box," Richard replied. "Craftsmanship like that is rare. But more than that, a man who would spend that kind of time and effort to make his daughter happy is the kind of person I want to do business with." As they walked home that evening, Emma clutching her music box like a treasure, she looked up at her father with eyes full of wonder. "Daddy, how did you know to put Mommy's picture in there?" Thomas squeezed her hand gently. "Because Mommy is always with us, sweetheart. Sometimes we just need something to help us remember." "Will you teach me to make something like this someday?" Emma asked. "If you want to learn, I'll teach you everything I know," Thomas promised. That night, as Emma fell asleep to the gentle melody of Fur-Elise playing from her music box, Thomas reflected on how much had changed in a single afternoon. He had started the day feeling like a failure, worried that his humble gift would embarrass his daughter among her wealthy classmates. Instead, he had learned that the most precious gifts, love, memory, time, and skill, were things that couldn't be bought in any store. The music box sat on Emma's nightstand, its melody fading as the mechanism wound down, but the love it represented would last forever. Thomas had given his daughter more than a toy. He had given her a connection to her mother, proof of his devotion, and a lesson about what really matters in life. In the weeks that followed, Thomas's small apartment became a workshop where he restored furniture for the Henderson family and their friends. Word spread about his skill and integrity, and soon he had enough work to leave his construction and cleaning jobs behind. Emma loved watching him work, learning about different types of wood and the tools used to shape them. But perhaps the most beautiful part of the story was how it rippled outward. Victoria Henderson starting a program at Emma's school where parents shared talents and skills with the children, regardless of their economic status. Richard Henderson began looking at his employees differently, recognizing that worth couldn't be measured in salary figures alone. And Emma? She became known at school not as the girl whose father couldn't afford expensive gifts, but as the girl whose father loved her enough to create magic with his own hands. The music box sat proudly on her desk at school during show and tell. And every time she played it, she shared the story of how her daddy had brought her mommy's memory back to life. The story of Thomas and Emma Wright spread throughout their community, reminding people that the most valuable gifts aren't found in stores, but in the love we show each other every day. It reminded parents that children don't need expensive toys to feel loved. They need to know that someone cares enough to put thought, time, and heart into making them happy. Would you have been able to create something so meaningful with so little? Tell us in the comments what the most special gift you've ever received was. Was it something expensive or something made with love? As winter turned to spring, the music box continued to play its gentle melody each night, filling Emma's dreams with memories of a mother she was learning to know again and the unshakable love of a father who had shown her that the best gifts in life can't be bought. They can only be made by hands guided by love. Family isn't just about blood or money or the things we can buy for each other. Family is about showing up, about caring enough to try, about loving someone so completely that you'll spend weeks learning new skills just to see them smile. Thomas Wright had reminded an entire community that the most precious gifts are the ones that come from the heart, wrapped not in expensive paper, but in the devotion of someone who loves you exactly as you are. And every night, as Fleur Elise played softly from that humble wooden box, Emma Wright fell asleep knowing she was the richest little girl in the world. Subscribe for more powerful stories like this, and click on the video on the screen to watch the next one with a twist so powerful you'll never forget it.